Alright, live now on YouTube, just for a little stream that I'm just going to do for a little while. I don't know how long I'm going to do the stream. Really just to come on for the news that we just not only got today, but earlier in the week. Man, if we couldn't get done sorry if I said the wrong word. I guess, what's the right word? Don't you hate when you lose a word? I guess grieving is what I was trying to say. We can't, I guess, get over grieving the loss of Ozzy Osbourne, the man that is basically the godfather of heavy metal music. With me being a proud metalhead, 2 days later, today, we lose probably the biggest name in the history of professional wrestling, Hulk Hogan. And, wow. It's like, okay, death is nothing new. We lose people all the time. Doesn't matter if they're famous or not. That when you lose two big icons of their respective industries in the same week, that's just crazy. Now, I will admit, it doesn't really, I guess, I don't know. It doesn't surprise me if Ozzy so much, even though it's still sad because he had his last show like 3 weeks ago when he did the Back to the Beginning tribute show where he got to perform both with his solo project and with the band he started all with, Black Sabbath. And we all know that Ozzy's had this fight with Parkinson's the last 20 years now, from what Sharon has said. And Ozzy's had all these different health issues related to it. So for him to pass, a short time later, like I said, almost 3 weeks after the concert had taken place, that is crazy. But then we get a bombshell. Oh boy, to have Hulk Hogan. It's like, that one right there, that one really caught me off guard. I mean, already Ozzy caught me off guard with his passing, but now Hulk Hogan? Hulk Hogan. Can you think of all people he's outlived in his sport? He's outlived the Macho Man. He's outlived Andre. He's outlived Ultimate Warrior, Big Boss Man, British Bulldog, Owen Hart, to even names like Eddie Guerrero, to one name I don't want to bring up because I know there's going to be people that defend a certain person for what he did. I'm sorry, I don't want to bring up that name. And it can go on and on. I mean, even metal music, I found people Ozzy's outlived, like Dimebag Darrell and Vinnie Paul, Pantera. Man. Jeff Hanneman and Slayer. I'm just trying to think of, there's so many people you can think of that Ozzy's outlived. I mean, and there's parallels between metal and music and pro wrestling. They both do live shows, and it seems like a lot of people in both die young. Ozzy and Hogan weren't really young per se, both in their 70s. Ozzy passing away at 76 and Hogan at 71. But that's, I guess, still not old. Especially if Hogan, I mean, I think with him it's just more of a surprise than almost it is with Ozzy. But either way, it's still quite the thing to deal with both of them passing this week. Now, of course, there's going to be a lot of negativity. I think more with Hogan, not so much with Ozzy. I mean, yeah, there's probably people who will probably say stuff about Ozzy when it comes to his wife, Sharon. But, when it comes to Hogan, though, I know there's going to be lots of, of course, let me read my comments, so sorry if I didn't see you guys' comments right away. So, we got Uncle Dave here. Hello, man, how you doing today? Well, I'm doing alright, despite the news that we're having to deal with. And my pal Joshua, my tag team partner over at the REC and JFP Live channel. Good morning to you, Joshua. Well, of course, because it's morning over there in Australia, while it's evening here in the U.S. But either way, it's a day of mourning for us all here when it comes to being wrestling fans. And if anyone here is a metalhead like me, and Joshua, I know you're a little bit of a metalhead, then yeah, to have this double whammy of Ozzy and Hogan both gone the same week. And keep in mind, I'm only mentioning them really. And this is not taken away from anyone else that's passed this week. They just recently announced that Chuck Mangione, if you don't know who that is, he's a famous trumpet player. He actually got some fame from being on King of the Hill. Actually, he voiced himself and appears in a few episodes. So he just recently passed, and though his death was actually, I guess, 2 days ago, I believe, and they're just now reporting it. And boy, to start the week off with Malcolm Jamal Warner, who played Theo in the Cosby Show, he passed away on Monday, thanks to it. Around Monday, it was the news was reported. Either way, it was from an accidental drowning. I know there's also another passing some people bring up. The guy who created Elder Scrolls. I don't play Elder Scrolls, so that's why, to me, it doesn't really hit a nerve like the other passes, mostly with Hogan and Ozzy. Oh, we got the gaming hill. Well, what's going on? Good to see you. Hello there to you too, as we talk about, man, Hogan and Ozzy. And as you guys notice, I am on Restream, so if anybody wants to come on for a while and maybe give your thoughts, maybe live on camera if you want to. If not, hey, that's what the live chat's for. I had to open the chat up to make sure I can see your guys' comments. So it's good to know that I'm live. Of course, everybody should know by now I have my new microphone, so I can actually get close to it when I need to. But that's here or there. I just have it here just for the heck of it. But more than anything, really just to talk about Hogan and Ozzy, and especially when some deaths kind of go together, like maybe sometimes a year apart. I think the last time I've seen something where I was affected both as a wrestling fan and as a metalhead was actually over 20 years ago when Dimebag Darrell was shot and killed on stage in December of 2004, and then close to a year later, Eddie Guerrero passes away, November of 2005. So one of the few times where my love of wrestling, my love of metal, to lose two people there. And it happens every so often. We lose people in all industries every so often. Like, obviously we've lost more people before, the passings of Hogan and Ozzy, but to lose them in the same week, and I'm not gonna lie, I was not hoping for this to happen, but part of me was kind of like, I was thinking, man, I lost Ozzy. What would happen if we lost somebody in the world of wrestling, and what would happen? Because this made big news with Ozzy's passing. I remember I was watching a live stream, and of course, with Ozzy being from the United Kingdom, Sky News was covering that constantly. So, of course, here in the U.S., with Hogan being from Augusta, Georgia, and then he died in Clearwater, Florida. Of course, you couldn't get more American than Hogan, especially with how Hogan came up at a time when the WWF at the time, now what we call WWE, needed an American hero. Especially with back then, you had the tensions between the United States and Iran. Crazy how history repeats itself, now it's not just with us in Iran, it's another country, Israel, and, well, I'm going to keep politics out as best I can. And boy, that's going to relate to Hogan in some ways, but back then we had Iron Sheik as the WWF champion, and he had just taken the belt off Bob Backlund, and then WWF needed an American hero to beat the Iranian villain. And there you go. Hogan won the WWF title. Started a boom period, not only for the WWF, but for wrestling in general. So it was definitely something back then that was unprecedented. It was not thought of, I guess. Okay, so we read more of your comments before I continue on. So Josh, I'm in shock with Hulk Hogan's passing this morning. Yes, as you said, some people may not have nice things to say about Hulk Hogan, but now would be the good time since this is about well-known icons out there who have recently passed away. What a week this is. Yes, you are right, and sadly, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to still talk crap. It doesn't matter if it's the sex tape or Hogan dropped the N-bomb. Doesn't matter if it's more recently with him becoming a diehard Trump supporter despite the fact that he was anti-Trump at one time. And you can even talk about his days in wrestling where he had creative control and he used his backstage politic, and you can go from WrestleMania 9 when he promised Bret Hart after he beat Yokozuna for the title that he would give Bret Hart a shot. Well, that didn't happen, and, well, that led to a lot of bad blood between Hogan and Hart. And then WCW, the match that was supposed to be the biggest match in WCW's history between Hogan and Sting for the world title, and how Hogan had the finish changed. And so I know there's a lot of people who are going to say that stuff, and that's fine. I'm not going to say people don't have the right to talk crap, but you can talk about crap you want, but come on. At the end of the day, how many of you are going to be wrestling fans without Hogan? And I'm already waiting for the naysayers to say, oh, I was a fan before Hogan. You're going to have people that talk about they used to watch, like, the old territories with Jim Crockett Promotions, and how if we didn't have Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair would probably be the big star. And yes, Ric Flair, We can't forget Flair. Thank God he's still here with us. Even Flair was devastated by this news. I think there's even a video where Flair is crying. Because Flair and Hogan had shared the ring in two separate companies. Mostly through WCW, but they did work together at WWE both early in the 90s and then in the 2000s when both had returned to the company. But I know there's going to be people who are going to say that, they didn't watch wrestling because of Hogan. And that's fine, But if you look back, Jim Crockett Promotions was almost on the verge of going out of business. And yes, part of that is kind of part of the WWF's fault. And especially how Vince McMahon, and I'll get to McMahon here in a little bit, did what he did to basically tell cable providers not to carry Starrcade, instead to carry Survivor Series, or they would lose care in WrestleMania. So I know that was something that really did hurt Crockett Promotions, which became WCW. And you think about the other promotions that are no longer in existence, like World Class Championship Wrestling, AWA, and ones that are still around but aren't really the big companies they once were, like the NWA, for example. But still, come on. Wrestling would just be a niche thing if it weren't for what the WWF and Hulk Hogan did for pro wrestling. We wouldn't really have wrestling on a major scale as of today. Who would have known if... I don't think we'd ever would have expected stars like Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, John Cena, Randy Orton, all the people we've had past and present without Hulk Hogan and what he did. At least in the ring. And then people like to talk about Hogan's wrestling skill. Sure, he wasn't the best wrestler. At least here in the U.S., I've heard stories that he actually was a decent wrestler more in Japan than he was here in America. But then you see some wrestlers who were great in the ring, but sucked in the microphone. And then you do have some that are both. I mean, sometimes in a sport that is, well, sorry to use the F word, fake, as a lot of the naysayers like to say. I prefer scripted, choreographed, because it's still a sport, but it's also like theater, basically, and you could still get hurt. We all know how wrestling takes a toll on the body, and, well, Hogan's a good example of that with his leg drops. Hogan was a man who was once near 7 feet tall. He was 6'8", 6'7", and because he dropped that leg so much, his disc in his back got messed up, and really, before his passing, he was 6'3". Still a tall man, but that tells you wrestling is not a sport that people can really say, oh, it's nothing. Well, why don't you go ask, if he was still alive, why don't you go ask Hogan how it felt, or maybe somebody who's still alive today, like McFoley. Ask him how he feels after he was thrown off the Hell in a Cell. But alright, guys, let me get back to your guys' comments. Alright, so yeah, so I watched recently a TMZ interview with Ric Flair. He was emotional mess when he was interviewed. Poor Rick is not taking the ruse well. And no, I bet he's not. Because you think of everybody that both he and Hogan have outlived, and now that's somebody else that Flair is older than, because keep in mind, Flair is 76 years of age. In fact, really, Flair's like a year younger than Ozzy. Ozzy, I think, was about to be 77 this year. And, you think now who all Rick has outlived that's younger than, yes, people that are also closer to his age, like Ozzy Osbourne. But, man, to lose Hulk Hogan already. Yeah, I mean, definitely, as Josh says, Hulk is the reason WWE had what has become today. Yep, and indeed, Hogan's star power was huge for WWE and put it on the map. Yeah, definitely. And there's that Rock and Wrestling connection, which tied in. Ozzy Osbourne is a big part of it too, because Ozzy has appeared at some WrestleManias. Hell, he was even with Jake the Snake Roberts for a match that Jake had. So Ozzy has a connection. In fact, Ozzy is in 2 Hall of Fames. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which he's in twice for both his solo career and part of Black Sabbath, and the WWE Hall of Fame, part of the Hall of Fame wing. So right there, there's that rock and wrestling connection. I mean, Ozzy is as important to WWE as Hogan is. Even if he's not as super important, but still, I mean, let me get back to Ozzy. Metal music, man. I mean, I wouldn't be a metalhead if it weren't for Ozzy Osbourne. And metal was a genre that was invented by accident. And I mean that literally, because Black Sabbath guitarist Tony Iommi was working in like a metal some kind of factory. I can't remember what it was. But basically, he messed up his fingers real bad. That made it hard to play guitar. So he had to get like prosthetics put on his fingers. And, well, through the change of his strings on his guitar, he was able to make that sound that became the metal sound. And before that, metal didn't even really exist. It wasn't like Ozzy, Iommi, and Black Sabbath were trying to invent a new genre. They were just another rock band. Um, really, if you look up Black Sabbath really started as more of a prog, more of a blues rock band. They really just invented metal by accident. But hey, it was a good accident. And and then you would get bands that would actually start experimenting and create even heavier stuff. I mean, you would get the invention of even other genres out in rock and and into metal. Like for example, punk rock, you could actually kind of say in some ways was created thanks to what Black Sabbath did for inventing metal. And in turn, thrash, a subgenre of metal, was invented when you took the new wave of British heavy metal, the genre that Black Sabbath was part of, and you take punk rock, put them together to make thrash, and you get so many different genres from death metal, hardcore, new metal, which also kind of combined rap, and oh, there's a rap connection with Ozzy too. We'll get to that in a little bit. And man, so much more. Like you think of what Ozzy and Black Sabbath did, not only for metal but just for music in general. I mean, a lot of the rock bands that got edgier too. We were getting out of the whole flower power hippie movement that we saw with like the Beatles and get into more edgier sounding rock bands. Bands like Thin Lizzy, Led Zeppelin, and you get into the 80s with the glam metal with Motley Crue, and then you get to more edgier stuff like grunge with Nirvana and Soundgarden and Pearl Jam. Of course, I mentioned new metal with Limp Bizkit and Korn, and then just the new wave of like American heavy metal bands like Lamb of God, Killswitch Engage, and all over like in Europe you got like crazy bands coming out of Sweden, Finland, Norway. Norway with their black metal scene. You got Sweden with some of like their technical death metal bands. Germany would come like a haven for metal. Even Japan. Hell, even recently, Baby Metal, a band that's like J-pop of metal, they just did a collaboration with Slaughter Prevail, a band that features guys from Russia, including a guy like the Russell Bears named Alex Terrible. They did a collaboration, and none of that would be possible without Ozzy Osbourne. And hell, you can credit some artists that in hip hop and rap that can say Ozzy was inspiration. Like Post Malone did a song with Ozzy Osbourne. Hell, Trick Daddy had a hit that sampled Crazy Train. And I bet Trick Daddy, can say he's thankful that Ozzy was around. Tech Nine, he's a real well-known rapper, and he's a big metalhead, so I know he's probably devastated by this loss. And I want to say Ozzy might have appeared on a Tech Nine song, and I'm not as familiar with a whole lot of Tech Nine stuff, but still, you think everybody that's been influenced. Hell, I think even country can say there's influence. Like we got Jelly Roll, who's going to be teaming up with Randy Orton at SummerSlam against Drew McIntyre, Logan Paul. I'm sure Jelly Roll's a big Ozzy fan, because that's a guy who combines country, rap, and a little bit of rock into his music. So this is somebody that transcends genres. He isn't just for metal. I mean, he's just for music in general. I mean, I'm sure you'll find people in pop and other genres that could probably say they were big fans of Ozzy Osbourne. Yeah, but Ozzy Osbourne, Hulk Hogan, man. And also the parallels between the two. How about they both did reality shows like we first got the Osbournes, and then years later we got Hogan Knows Best. So I hate that's something. Alright, so we'll get back to your guys' comments here. Josh O right here says, for sure, it's respectable to say Ozzy get a two-time Hall of Famer from two industries. Well, for sure. In a way, he's more of a three-time Hall of Famer, I guess you could say, if you count his two Rock and Roll Hall of Fames. But still, hey, either way. Now right here, Gaming Hill, I mostly remember Hogan for two things. One, some of his films like Mr. Nanny and Sorority Commando, and two, Monday Night Wars, where he's the third man, and oh boy, if that doesn't hit hard. The third man, well, 2/3 of the original NWO is no longer with us because we already lost Scott Hall several years back, and now no more Hogan. Kevin Nash is the last one of the three original members of the NWO who was still with us. Man. And not to mention, just recently, Hogan and Bischoff were going to get into a business venture to start a new wrestling company called Real Freestyle Wrestling, or Real American Freestyle. Sorry if I'm kind of butchering that. Where they were going to basically have their own wrestling promotion, which I hope would have been better than Celebrity Championship Wrestling, Hogan's reality show that he and Bischoff did, but that was with celebrities, not actual wrestlers. And, maybe it'll still go forward even without Hogan there to help run it. Oh, boy. But yeah, what a time. But anyways, I'm about to end the stream here soon. Unless anybody wants to join in for a bit and maybe mention anything. I don't have the invite link, but I could always private message you guys if you want to come on. If not, well, even if he hasn't, now would be a good time for me. 3 or 4 time for his legacy. Yeah. If you're talking about Ozzy, I don't know whatever Hall of Fame's Ozzy could probably go into. There's not really I mean, there might be some other music Hall of Fames. But of course, Ozzy's only had 2 bands, his solo project and Black Sabbath. So he already went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for that. And then of course, he only really was involved in WWE. I mean, I guess the only other accolade Ozzy's gotten is a star on the Walk of Fame in Hollywood, which Ozzy has appeared in some movies. Like for example, he was in Little Nicky, because of course they have to reference the fact that Ozzy bit the head off a bat on stage. And that's something that Ozzy's been remembered for. I mean, there's a lot of things you can remember Ozzy for. And, like I said, there's stuff you can remember Hogan for, both good and bad. But, you know what? It's not right to speak ill of the dead, and you shouldn't. Because, believe me, there's people that have done worse things than Hogan Ozzy. I mean, like I said, there's somebody we're never going to mention here, because I'm just going to leave that guy out. Team people that are still alive today that I don't want to talk about with how things are going in the world right now. But yeah, 2025 isn't quite the year so far. And like I said, it's nothing new. We lose people all the time. But when you lose 2 big icons in the same time frame, man. Let's read this. I remember Ozzy Osbourne featured in an ad for World of Warcraft. It was amusing as hell. Yeah, I got you. You correct yourself. You're good. Oh yeah, both Ozzy and Hogan have done quite the commercials. Hell, I just saw one of Hogan doing a commercial back in Japan for an air conditioner. And it's like, oh man. And of course the one for Hostamania, which parody Miley Cyrus is on a wrecking ball, where Hogan, yeah. Not dressed the way we want to see him dressed. I mean, he was wearing one of his signature shirts, but what he wore below it, yeah. I mean, good thing they kept it to where it was tasteful, but that commercial. Oh, man. But yeah, guys, I think I'm going to get ready to wrap it up here soon. Like I said, unless anybody wants to come on camera and want to, give more thoughts, and if not, cool, I will probably end it here soon. But, like I said, crazy when you think about losing 2 people the same week that are both legends in their respective industries, and we wouldn't have these 2 industries without them. Ozzy in the world of metal, Hogan in the world of wrestling. Yeah. Yep, exactly. Which is why I'm looking down on the middle of this. Yes, don't agree with some of those views, but respect the heck out of him for his contribution to wrestling as a whole. Yep, and obviously, we still have 2 people with us, whether you like them or not. We already mentioned one of them, Ric Flair. The other one, well, we wouldn't have Hulkamania if it weren't for Vince McMahon. You can love or hate Vince all you want, especially with all the allegations that have come out in recent years, from personal stuff outside the ring to what Vince has done as the owner of WWE before he sold the company to TKO. Well, to Endeavor to create TKO. But at least Hogan, there's somebody that was important to Vince, because Vince couldn't have done it without him. And there's, and of course, he could have still found more stars. I mean, the Macho Man could have been a big star for WWE, and he was to an extent. Andre, though Andre's health was already getting bad. Piper could have been a big, bigger star than he was. You think of everybody that's wrestled in the WWF/E before it became the big company it is today, when wrestling was still small, when it was just seen as some other sport that wasn't even seen as a sport. But still, man, without Vince McMahon, he's just as important as Hogan and Flair. And already there's people on the internet that are already talking crap to Vince, saying, "Oh, you're next." Because keep in mind, Vince McMahon, he's already in his 80s, and it's like, come on, people, have some class. You don't have to like Vince McMahon, but if you're gonna troll Vince because he posted something, and it was like, yes, it was a typed out statement, could have been a representative that basically did this for McMahon and put it on his Twitter, but come on, people. McMahon knows that even with the fallouts he's had with Hogan over the years, the WWE would have never become the juggernaut it is today without Hogan. Just as much as it wouldn't be a juggernaut without McMahon, because Vince McMahon is still as important as Hogan. Yes, there will be a day when we'll lose Vince, and we'll have to recognize that. Because really, when it comes to big names, the big names that are left that I think will be the ones we'll definitely feel the most when we lose them, well, I would say at least for sure 2, 3 names, and hopefully it's not anytime soon, because one of them I think will still have much more time. But of course, McMahon, once he's gone, then that he's, I mean, if it weren't for him and his father, his family bringing the WWE into existence, going back to when it was the Capital Wrestling Corporation, we wouldn't have wrestling as is. And then Flair, because even though it's disputable between WWE and wrestling historians how many titles Flair actually has, and Cena, of course, broke the record for recognized reigns with WWE, and we can't take it away from Cena. Cena still did it, and hey, Cena still has the most WWE titles of anyone that's been WWE. But when we lose McMahon and Flair, that's when the wrestling industry will really go into like a big stage shock. And then the third name, I think we still got much more time out of him, even though he's now officially out of the business as a wrestler, will be Sting, because we can't take anything away from Sting. And somebody who's had matches with both Hogan and Flair, some of his best matches. So I think those are the names we'll have to be definitely on the watch for. And there are others. I bet there's many more that, unless they come unexpectedly, like Dave Austin's gone, Rock is gone, Undertaker, any of those names. But a lot of them we still have time. But then again, we learn with people like Eddie Guerrero to Bray Wyatt, it's not guaranteed that you'll make it to, your elder years. Oh, hey, here we go. TN Couponer, welcome. Good to see you. I'm doing alright. Hope you're doing alright. Yeah, the IWC marks do need to show. And it's not just IWC marks. There's people outside of wrestling who like to talk crap. And we've got TN and Joshua talking to each other out here in the chat. So, like I said, guys, if you guys do want to come on camera, cool. If not, like I said, I probably will stay on for a little bit longer. Oh, yeah. Part of your childhood. Yeah. NWO was a big part of high school days. Yeah, I was in middle school when the NWO had started. Actually, I was in like late elementary going in the middle, because I didn't really start watching wrestling until 1998. But by the time I got into middle school, yeah, the NWO already had become the big thing it already was at the time, because, man, it was what got me into wrestling. Especially when I played WCW versus NWO World Tour for the first time. And I was already aware of who Hulk Hogan was. Even before I was into wrestling, I mean, Hulk Hogan was that one name you saw everywhere, whether you watched wrestling or not. So how could you not know who Hulk Hogan was back then if you grew up in the 80s and 90s? Man, yeah, it's just crazy. Like I said, we all know that someday we were going to lose people like Hogan and people like Ozzy, but around the same time, it's just crazy, crazy. Well, we're all on a crazy train. I'm not going to sing the whole song, because I heard you can get your video blocked if you were to sing that entire song or have it playing, so don't expect any music in this stream, and we'll keep it that way. I mean, I'm not even monetized. I just don't want to have my stream blocked in case I start deciding that I want to sing. But anyways, boy. But yeah, just to have 2 icons gone, and just this year alone, with everything we're dealing with, I don't know. I mean, I try to stay positive with what's going on, but it's just like, man, what else can you really say when you lose these 2 people? I mean, their lives, they've lived good, long lives, so it's not like dying young, even though 71 and 76 is still young in a way. I still think so. But they were in like that twilight of their life where it's just, and honestly, we all learn that life is not guaranteed, no matter how old you are. You can be 70 or you can be 7. It doesn't matter. Life, you're just lucky to get each day when you wake up the next day, or somebody else in your family wakes up the next day. Oh yeah, WrestleMania 2 is British Bulldogs. I was trying to think who else Ozzy came out with. Yep. I would say British Bulldogs. I want to say he did something with Captain Lou Albano, where they were together. And then, oh, yep, okay, Ozzy, Road Warriors theme song, Iron Man, which, yep, that's a classic song right there from Black Sabbath. And also, fun fact, Until today, I had never heard Planet Caravan, the original Black Sabbath version. I don't know, it's just one of the times where I want to get around to listen to more music, and I've heard so much of Ozzy's hits that he's played through his main act and through Black Sabbath. Of course, Black Sabbath, I know Iron Man, Paranoid, War Pigs, which WWE's used as the theme song for Survivor Series, Sweet Leaf. I've heard Electric Funeral by Black Sabbath, and I've heard, I'm trying to think of a few other songs of theirs. I think I've heard Hole in the Sky by them, which two of those songs I just mentioned were covered by Pantera and Planet Caravan. In fact, Hole in the Sky, Electric Funeral, and Planet Caravan were three Pantera covers of Black Sabbath. And until now, I had never heard Planet Caravan by Black Sabbath. I've only heard the Pantera cover. But boy, I didn't even know that was Ozzy singing. And that was before Auto-Tune was a thing. Because they used something called a Leslie speaker for Ozzy to distort his voice. But if you listen to the raw recording of it, it still doesn't even sound like Ozzy. Ozzy's singing like it in such a higher pitch than he normally is known for singing. And I was like, really? That's Ozzy? And that song is one of those songs that, even though I don't smoke weed or do any psychedelics, I don't do anything like that, that's probably one of those songs you probably would best enjoy if you're high. And that's not me insulting the song. Because I've heard stories about people who listen to stuff like Pink Floyd and they get that full experience when they're, smoking, like, so they can really enjoy the song. Oh, yep. Oh, Mama, I'm Coming Home. That's a classic. Oh, man. That's another thing that hits hard. Ozzy Osbourne. Mama, I'm Coming Home. Believe it or not, when my mom was getting ready to pass away back in 2014, and I had gotten the news that her brain had rotted so bad that she was going to be pronounced dead any time, I played that song on the way home. Because, man, my mom loved Ozzy Osbourne, and it's sad that she didn't get to be around to, see Ozzy perform his last show. Because I know she would have loved to have watched it. She was a huge fan of Black Sabbath when she was growing up. When she was a teenager back in the 70s, like, Black Sabbath was still a new band back then. So, and she grew up, she would listen to Ozzy's solo stuff, Where Mama I'm Coming Home, Crazy Train. We got Mr. Crowley, Bark at the Moon, Shot in the Dark. Name every song. Like, Ozzy's had at least 20 hit singles when it comes to his solo career. I mean, hell, he had a tour named after him, Ozfest, and many great bands that I listened to, from Pantera to Slipknot to Slayer to the Deftones, Soulfly. I can name a good list of bands that have performed at Ozfest. And it's like, man, Ozfest, which is kind of like the heavy metal equivalent to WrestleMania. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. I would say your mom would have been the same generation as my mom. She was in shock when she heard Ozzy's passing. Still has records here still. Yeah, I wish I had some stuff my mom's that were related to Ozzy. I know I have like one of her CDs that she had for Ozzy. I think it might have been Blizzard of Oz. But either way, man, to lose an icon like Ozzy Osbourne and then to lose Hulk Hogan days later, it's still quite the shock. I still can't believe it. And like I said, in a week we've also lost a few other people, while not as significant, like Malcolm Jamal Warner to Chuck McJones. And they're still significant people for who they are. But yeah, your uncle is a fan of Ozzy. Hit him hard too. Yeah. I don't want to say my uncle, he's also a fan of Ozzy. He listens to a lot of rock. So, and maybe a little bit of metal, not so much the metal I'm into, more like the older stuff, like Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, bands like those that started back in the 70s, went into the 80s. And, when you want to talk about metal, if you ever want to start a Mount Rushmore, well, obviously Ozzy has to be number one, because there wouldn't be any metal without him and Black Sabbath. Then after that, I would say, in no particular order, I would say if you were trying to go in order of like who would be on each part, like Ozzy would be where Washington is, because just like George Washington was our first president here in the U.S., Ozzy would be the first, big metal musician. After that, I would say you would throw Rob Halford for Judas Priest. Then I would say Bruce Dickinson of Iron Maiden. And after that, well, somebody else who's not with us, Lemmy of Motorhead. And Motorhead was a band that was pretty important to how metal would evolve. Let me just say this. Ozzy and Black Sabbath helped start metal, and then Motorhead perfected how metal would sound. In fact, Lemmy, with his distinct voice, would kind of be an inspiration as well. And now to consider that two of those four names I just mentioned are no longer with us, man, I mean, it's been almost 10 years since Lemmy's passing. So us now no longer have Ozzy and Lemmy. It's like, man, we've lost two of the gods of metal. So it's still a blessing we have Rob Halford and Bruce Dickinson with us, alongside lots of others from James Hetfield, Metallica, Phil Anselmo of Pantera, and other bands he has, and I can go on and on of people that are still with us today. All right. It will be interesting to see if SmackDown do a true show for Hulk Hogan. I hope so. I hope they do. That they better. I mean, even if you don't make the whole show about Hogan, I mean, the WWE has a lot to owe to Hogan. Hell, wrestling in general. Because don't forget, Hogan did have a brief time in TNA. From 2010 to 2014, Hogan and Bischoff were in TNA together running the promotion. Even if it wasn't the best time for TNA, but they were still there. Hell, even AEW owes a lot to Hogan. Just for the fact that Tony Khan, like us, is a wrestling fan. Yeah, you can say what you want about Tony Khan and how he books things in AEW, but at the end of the day, he's a fan like us, and he would have never wanted to form a wrestling company if he never got into wrestling. Oh, yes, WWE, Vault Channel, YouTube will have a Hogan Marathon tomorrow. Yeah, and then, of course, there's also the WCW channel, which right now is showing a lot of classic pay-per-views, so I'm sure they'll show some of the pay-per-views that Hogan's wrestled on from 1994 through 2000, which, man, we're already like several weeks away. We're several weeks removed from the 25th anniversary, I think, for a moment. Math. I'm getting old. But anyways, yeah, it's been over 25 years since Hogan made his last appearance at WCW at Bash the Beach, which would be the one that would turn from a worked shoot to a shoot when Hogan badmouth Vince Russo and how WCW was going to crap, and then, Vince Russo went off script and said some crap about Hogan, and after that, Hogan would leave WCW. He would sue the company before it went out of business, and the lawsuit would continue for even more years, even after WCW had already been purchased by WWE. So it's like, you think of some of the infamous moments and famous moments that Hogan's been involved in, in WCW and the WWE/F, and yes, short times with AWA and New Japan as well. And even when he's wrestled in other places that were short-lived, like the XWF, the Excitement Wrestling Federation, how that company lasted for, like, as they say in wrestling, a cup of coffee. Like, man, I mean, still, you can't really think of how wrestling would be without Hogan. And even if a lot of organizations like, say, CMLL Mexico, the oldest organization in the world, to the NWA, which is the oldest North American organization before WWE, and then New Japan, All Japan, of course AAA, which is now owned by WWE, and various independent promotions, a lot of them, they have a lot to owe to Hulk Hogan for helping make wrestling as popular as it is, even if wrestling was a thing before Hogan helped put it on the map alongside Vince. Oh, yeah. Dude, who can forget that? The heel turn to join the NWO, greatest heel turn? Yes, because it had to happen. You could only do so much of the whole babyface run with Hogan for so long. The red and yellow was starting to get stale. And the 90s was a time when things started getting more edgy. So how do you get edgier than that? Turn Hogan heel, have him wear black and white, develop this new persona where he's a gangster rapper kind of guy. Of course, lives the name Hollywood Hogan because he had already done some movies at this point. So, yeah, it had to happen. And even the more recent years with Roman Reigns having a great heel turn. To John Cena finally turned heel for the first time since 2003. Those are all great heel turns. But we wouldn't have had heel turns like that if we would have had Hogan's big heel turn. The one that, keep in mind, revolution in the industry. Hell, the NWO is what helped basically kickstart what the WWF needed to start the Attitude Era, to have somebody like Stone Cold Steve Austin, start being vulgar and drinking beer and turn things around for the WWF and give us the epic, contest we saw in the Monday Night War, even if there were some that we don't like to remember, like the Finger Poke of Doom. Hogan was a part of that with Nash, but hey, we still remember it. We still talk about it. May not be a great moment, but hey, it's memorable. Maybe for the wrong reasons, right? Ah, man. But yeah, guys, I think I will stay on for about another 20 minutes. Then after that, I will wrap up for sure, just to kind of keep this going for about a good hour. As I said, if you guys do want to join me here on the stream, cool. If you're on the live chat, and I am on Restream, For anybody that wants to join on camera, if you do, cool. If not, like I said, I'll be fine talking here by myself as long as I'm not doing it for too long. Because I will probably have to get a drink after a while if I just chill. That's why I also haven't really done much in the way of Pokemon card openings, because it's been hard to find Pokemon cards, but I have been lucky to find Pokemon cards again at my local Family Dollar. Maybe in the future I'll open up some more cards on stream. Maybe I'll open some wrestling cards. Maybe I'll look on eBay and I'll try to find some cards that maybe have Hulk Hogan in, where it'd be some old WF cards, WCW cards, or any more of the recent WWE stuff that's Hogan in it. So, I guess in the future, stay tuned for all that, just because, hey, I like to still open that stuff here on camera. And, of course, maybe do figure reviews again at some point. I'd get into the microphone, of course. Hollywood Hogan. I'm glad I got this. And this is going to be something I do wish I could have gotten signed if I were met Hogan, but sadly, like maybe a few others here, many others, never to meet Hogan. Okay, enjoy your dinner break. Take care. All right, cool. All right, TN, thanks for being here, man. I'm glad you could come here and chime in on what you want to say about Hogan. Thanks for being here, dude. Rock on. Enjoy your dinner, man. If you're still eating or if you're just finishing up, but all right. Like I said, I'm gonna stay on for a little bit longer before I wrap things up. Man, trying to think more moments of Hogan. I mean, it's just so much we can go through. Everything from the first WrestleMania of Hogan and Mr. T versus Paul Orndorff and Roddy Piper, and now you consider 3 of those 4 names are gone, and you got other people that were involved in that match, from Muhammad Ali being a guest enforcer to that's another person we don't like talking about. Jimmy Snuka, he's not there. So the only people that are in that match that are still with us today would be Cowboy Bob Orton, Randy Orton's father, and then after that, Mr. T. Sorry guys, I just saw something pop up. So give me a moment, guys. I'm just looking at something. Alright, anyways, sorry. Anyways, I'm going to be wrapping up here soon, because I got something else I got to do here pretty soon. I was with my pals, but yeah, there's a lot we could talk about here, and I was thinking about making a video, but sometimes it's better just to kind of do it live, just talk about it, here. But hold on, guys, I got to type something real quick. I got something I got. Sorry, I got some I'm about to do after I'm done with this stream, but I just had some had some sleeves on my table just fall onto the keyboard. I have my webcam right in front of me, so it's kind of hard to type this. Alright, I just about to go do a voice chat here soon with my pals, but I thought I'd at least type that real quick. Let me see, have I missed any more comments? Oh, no, I haven't. Okay. Yeah, I think this might be a good stopping point, honestly, because we can go hours, we can go days, we can go weeks, we can go years talking about Hogan. And I'm hoping one thing, now that he's no longer with us, but he's now with somebody else, I'm hoping the Hogan and the Macho Man have buried the hatchet. Because that is one thing that does suck, that before Savage passed, that he and Hogan apparently never patched things up. Hogan, unfortunately, being, I hate bringing this up, and kind of the bullshit that a lot of people like to say he is, from saying that he lied about trying to be in Metallica, and there's various other things Hogan said to kind of inflate his ego. Hogan claims that he and Savage, before Savage passed away, patched things up, and I've heard other people say that was not the truth, so I don't know who to believe. So I'm hoping that maybe now that Savage is reunited with Hogan in heaven, now that Hogan is with him, or wherever they're in the afterlife, that they could do that famous handshake one more time. Sorry, I can't reenact the best way. To combine the mega powers and have some epic matches up there in the afterworld. And hey, they can have Ozzy there with them, because why not? But alright guys, I think I said I was going to go on for 20 minutes. But I'm like, nah, I'm going to get ready to wrap it up here because I'm running out of things to talk about. But alright. Gonna end it here. I want to thank y'all for watching this stream. Just a stream to talk about legends in pro wrestling and heavy metal with Hulk Hogan passing away today and Ozzy Osbourne passing away 2 days earlier. Rest in peace to them both. Who cares about what they've done that maybe you may not like? None of us will be fans of either of their respective industries without them. I just don't know how anyone could be a wrestling fan outside the few people that watch wrestling maybe elsewhere besides what was being off by WF. And metal, while metal is a genre that doesn't really care about being popular, it would not be as successful as it is today if it weren't for Ozzy, just like wrestling would not be what it is today without Hogan. Alright, so that's it, guys. I'm going to wrap it up here. Thanks for watching. Rock on. Keep collecting. Stay safe. And rest in peace, Ozzy Osbourne. And rest in peace, Hulk Hogan. Both of you will be missed. And, hey, if you guys haven't already, put on some Ozzy records, put on some Black Sabbath, watch some Hulk Hogan matches. Do whatever you can to honor these guys, because there'll never be anyone like them. Even if there are others out there that are inspired by them, but, hey, Ozzy and Hogan, one of a kind, and they'll be missed. Alright, guys, I'm ending it now. Take it easy, and I'll catch you all on the next stream, whenever it might be. Alright, take it easy, guys.